Good morning and a very warm welcome. You are watching JanataTelevision and this is the English Bulletin with me, Sushant Akal. The top stories first. Death toll from coronavirus climbs to 107 in Nepal. Kathmandu Valley sees a surge in infection. CCMC reconsidering strict measures to contain coronavirus. Government cancels all repatriation flights until further notice. Secondary education examination results published. Government approves internal grading. COVID-19 death toll in India tops 50,000. Migrants return to Delhi for work. And Inter Milan thrashed Shakhtar 5-0 in the Europa League semi-final. The Nerazzurri will play Sevilla for the title. And now the news in detail. Coronavirus has claimed 3 more lives in the country. The government yesterday confirmed the deaths, including 1 each in Rautahar, Morang and Kathmandu. According to the Ministry of Health and Population, a 32-year-old man in Rautahar, a 60-year-old man in Morang and a 58-year-old woman in Kathmandu have become the latest victims of the disease. With this, the total death toll from coronavirus has reached 107 in the country.
आज 3 जनाको दुःखद निधन भएको छ। रौतहटका 32 वर्षीय एक पुरुष, मोरङ जिल्लामा 60 वर्षीय एक पुरुष र काठमाडौँमा 58 वर्षीय एक महिला गरी 3 जनाको मृत्यु भएको छ र यससँगै मृत्यु हुनेको संख्या जम्मा 107 पुगेको छ।
Meanwhile, the government yesterday confirmed 581 new cases of coronavirus. Among them, 168 cases were detected in the Kathmandu Valley. Altogether, 109 cases were reported in Kathmandu, 15 in Lalitpur and 14 in Bhaktapur. The total number of coronavirus cases in Nepal has climbed to 27,241.
आज जम्मा महिला 173 र पुरुष 408 गरी जम्मा 581 जना हुनुहुन्छ।
Currently, 9,639 persons are undergoing treatment in isolation across the country. Meanwhile, 17,495 persons have recovered from the disease and have been discharged from the hospital. The number of persons kept in quarantine stands at 15,198. The government has decided to adopt strict measures to curb the spread of coronavirus after a surge in number of infection in the capital and across the country. A cabinet meeting yesterday discussed about the increase in cases of coronavirus and the measures taken by the government so far. The Council of Ministers discussed about reimposing lockdown or clamping curfew to stop the spread of the disease. However, the ministers could not reach a conclusion on the issue. A meeting of the COVID-19 Crisis Management Center today is expected to change the modality of measures adopted by the government to curb the disease. Following an increase in coronavirus cases in the Kathmandu Valley at an alarming rate, the concerned authorities of Kathmandu, Lalitpur and Bhaktapur are considering either a lockdown again or prohibitory order. The government yesterday confirmed 581 new cases of coronavirus across the country. Among them, 168 cases were reported in the Kathmandu Valley alone. The government has announced the cancellation of all repatriation flights scheduled to commence from Monday until further notice. The government has said the 5th phase of repatriation flight had to be put on hold owing to the growing COVID-19 cases in the country. The Ministry of Culture, Tourism and Civil Aviation took the decision on behalf of the government after receiving a letter from the COVID-19 Crisis Management Committee to terminate all chartered flights for the time being. A cabinet meeting on Monday decided to repatriate 300 Nepalese stranded abroad upon the recommendation of various embassies and 200 more at the expense of Foreign Employment Welfare Fund. In the letter addressed to the ministry, CCMC has stated the lack of adequate management of quarantine facilities at hotels where the returnees would be staying on return. CCMC has listed rapid surge in COVID-19 cases, prohibitory orders by the local administrations, and absence of information regarding hotel quarantines for the cancellation of flights. The CCMC has requested the Tourism Ministry to grant permission for chartered flights only after the availability of hotel quarantine facilities. The National Examination Board has published the results of the secondary education examinations. The meeting of the board yesterday decided to publish the result. The SEE, which was scheduled to begin on March 19th, was postponed in the last minute due to coronavirus crisis. As the exams were deferred indefinitely, the board decided to approve the internal evaluations for the grading. All schools had submitted their internal evaluation to the board through the district coordination units. This is Janata Bulletin. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back after the break. We continue with other national news. The ruling Nepal Communist Party and the main opposition party, Nepali Congress, have agreed to hold dialogue for making appointment at vacant positions in various constitutional bodies. The Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli and NC President Sher Bahadur Deuba consulted with each other regarding the appointment of office bearers at different constitutional bodies. In the meeting held at the Prime Minister's official residence in Balwatar yesterday, NC President Sher Bahadur Deuba drew the attention of the Prime Minister regarding the landslide that hit Lidi of Jugal rural municipality, Sindhupalchok, killing 22 people. Flood and landslide have been destroying life and property all across the country, and the government's response has been inadequate, NC President Deuba lamented. Similarly, Deuba also raised concerns about the coronavirus death toll crossing the 100 mark and requested the government to come up with new strategies for controlling the disease. The Prime Minister, as the Chancellor of Tribhuvan University, should also make attempts to solve the existing crisis at TU. NCP's Executive Chairman Pushpa Kamal Dahal and NC leader Ramesh Lekhak were also present during yesterday's meeting. Prime Minister Oli and NC President Deuba have agreed to meet for further discussions to accelerate the appointment process at a Constitutional Council. The Secretariat meeting of the ruling Nepal Communist Party yesterday approved the six-member task force formed on Friday to resolve the internal rift within the party. NCP's Secretariat meeting was convened after a hiatus of almost a month following the dispute between the two chairmen. The meeting held yesterday at Prime Minister's official residence in Balwatar endorsed the task force led by party's General Secretary Bishnu Paudel. PM Oli and Dahal had jointly informed the meeting about the task force. The newly formed task force includes the party's General Secretary Bishnu Paudel, Janardhan Sarma, Shankar Pokhrel, Bhim Rawal, Surendra Pandey, and Pampha Bhusal.
अध्यक्ष कमरेडहरू कमरेड केपी शर्मा ओली र कमरेड प्रचण्डले कार्यदल गठन गरेर सुझाव पेश गर्न जो पहल गर्नुभयो त्यो पहललाई बैठकले सकारात्मक रूपमा लिँदै त्यसको निम्ति धन्यवाद दिएको छ र साथै आजको सचिवालयको बैठकले उक्त कार्यदल गठनको गठनलाई अथवा उ कार्यदललाई अनुमोदन पनि गरेको छ.
The task force aims to resolve the existing disputes between the chairman duo Oli and Dahal and has been scheduled to submit the report next Saturday. Nepal and India finally sat down for discussions after issues regarding the new map of Nepal and a dispute surrounding the issue of Lipu Lake had created a rift between the two countries. A report.
Although the discussions at the political level have not yet opened between the two nations, the 8th annual meeting of the Oversight Mechanism, a combined monitoring mechanism, kicked off virtually from yesterday. The Nepali side was led by Foreign Secretary Shankar Das Bairagi, whereas the Indian side was led by the Indian Ambassador to Nepal, Vinay Mohan Quatra. The meeting, which had to be conducted virtually due to the effect of the coronavirus pandemic, primarily discussed about the joint plans and projects that the two countries are currently working together on. Projects such as Tarai Road, a train track across the border, Arun 3rd hydroelectricity project, petroleum pipeline, Pancheshwar project, and the current status of all reconstruction work in Nepal after the 2015 earthquake were discussed in the meeting. Reconstruction, irrigation, electricity and transmission line, construction of Nepal Police Academy, unified checkpost, Ramayan Circuit, motorable bridge at the Mahakali River were some of the other projects discussed in the virtual meeting. Earlier, the two prime ministers had a telephone conversation during India's Independence Day. The Indian side informed in the meeting on Monday that it has already completed the reconstruction of 46,301 of the committed 50,000 houses. The Nepali side also thanked its Indian counterpart for the help they provided during the coronavirus pandemic. The Foreign Ministry informed that no discussions were held about the border issues. This is the first official meeting between the two neighbours after Nepal included the disputed territories of Limpiadhura, Lipu Lake and Kalapani in its national map. The oversight mechanism was established after the Nepali Prime Minister visited India as a monitoring entity that would facilitate the completion of all joint projects. The mechanism's 9th meeting will be held after a mutual understanding between the two nations.
And now the news from the economic front. The Nepal Rashtra Bank has called for proposals for the first time after preparing the work procedure for obtaining refinancing on loans. The central bank has called for all commercial banks, development banks and finance companies to apply for the refinancing of loans through a notice issued yesterday. The central bank has called for proposals for micro refinancing, small and cottage industry loan, general refinancing of loans, among others. The notice states that all proposals must be submitted before 30th September. The central bank has said that the areas affected heavily by the coronavirus pandemic will be eligible to apply for the refinancing of the loans. The central bank has decided to divide the refinancing of the loans into 3 different categories, with the interest rates of the loans fixed between 3 to 5%. The loans given to individuals involved in their own businesses of up to 1.5 million have been categorized under the micro refinancing loans, whereas special loans issued by banks in special cases have been categorized under the special refinancing scheme, which will be levied an interest of only 3%. Time for a short break here at Janata Bulletin. Stay tuned for international news. Welcome back, and now the international news. India's COVID-19 deaths topped 50,000 yesterday, 5 months after the country reported its first such fatality, Reuters reported. According to the news agency, migrant workers have started returning back to major cities in hopes of regaining work after the easing of antivirus restrictions. Hundreds of migrant workers from the countryside had left the capital New Delhi in droves after losing their jobs in a nationwide lockdown in March. They returned in buses yesterday and were made to wait in lines for rapid COVID-19 tests. Those who tested positive were sent to quarantine centers, while the rest were allowed to leave the city's busy interstate bus terminus. The world's second most populous country recorded 57,981 new coronavirus infections in the past 24 hours, the news agency reported yesterday. The total number of cases has reached 2.65 million. India is only the third country behind Brazil and the United States to record more than 2 million infections, but it has a relatively low case fatality rate of 1.9% compared to the world average of 3.5%. Death Valley in California recorded one of the hottest air temperatures anywhere on the planet in at least a century and possibly ever on Sunday. According to Reuters, the temperature in the Death Valley soared to 54.4 degrees Celsius. An automated observation system run by the U.S. National Weather Service reported the record during an extreme heat wave, which has become a frequent occurrence due to climate change. A temperature of 56.7 degrees was recorded in Death Valley in July 1913, according to the World Meteorological Organization. Climate change has pushed global temperatures to new highs in Europe. Northern Spain broke local heat records in July, while wheat fields in France caught fire. Forests across Siberian Russia are seeing unprecedented wildfires, while the Arctic ice shrank to a record low for July due to melting. You're watching Janata Bulletin, and now the latest from the world of sports. Romelu Lukaku and Lautaro Martinez both scored twice as Inter Milan hammered Shakhtar Donetsk in Dusseldorf to set up a Europa League final showdown with Sevilla. Martinez opened the scoring for the Italian side in the 19th minute in a quiet second half. The Ukrainian club Shakhtar enjoyed more than 60% possession but lacked the killer instinct up front where it mattered. After the break, Inter broke free as they scored 4 second-half goals, with Martinez scoring another in the 74th minute after D'Ambrosio scored in the 64th minute. Lukaku scored a couple of goals for himself in the 78th and the 83rd minute as Inter completed a drubbing of Shakhtar by 5-0. Inter will now play Sevilla in the Europa League final on August 22nd at the Rhein-Energia Stadion in Cologne in Germany. Spanish club Barcelona have sacked manager Quique Setién 3 days after his side's humiliating defeat at the hands of Bayern Munich in the Champions League. Barcelona lost the quarter-final tie with the German club by a score of 8-2. Quique, 61, was the manager of Real Betis until December, while he was appointed as the Barcelona manager in January. He completed 25 matches, with Barcelona finishing trophyless this season. They also finished 5 points behind Real Madrid as their arch-rivals took the La Liga title. Setién, who replaced Ernesto Valverde at the Nou Camp, had said after the defeat, "It was time for us to review and take the decisions which are needed for the future." After he was sacked on Monday, Barcelona said this is the first decision within a wider restructuring of the first team. Netherlands manager Ronald Koeman, who played for the Catalan Giants between 1989 and 1995, is set to replace Setién at the Nou Camp. We are at the end of Janata Bulletin, and the headlines once again. Death toll from coronavirus climbs to 107 in Nepal. Kathmandu Valley sees a surge in infection. CCMC reconsidering strict measures to contain coronavirus. Government cancels all repatriation flights until further notice. Secondary education examination results published. Government approves internal grading. COVID-19 death toll in India tops 50,000. Migrants return to Delhi for work. And Inter Milan thrashed Shakhtar 5-0 in the Europa League semi-final. The Nerazzurri will play Sevilla for the title. And that's all from the English News Desk for today. You can follow Janata Television and our programs on various social media platforms, including on our website janatasamachar.com. We urge all our viewers to follow government directives of the lockdown and follow healthy hygienic practices to keep safe from any infection. Keep watching Janata Television. Namaste.